Title: Untold Feelings. Minji and Joon-ho had known each other since the day they were born. Their mothers, inseparable best friends since high school, had planned their pregnancies together. They would often meet to share stories and laughter while their babies kicked within them. As children, Minji and Joon-ho became the embodiment of their mother's dreams, always side by side, supporting each other through scraped knees, childhood pranks, and their shared love for adventure. Their friendship became something that everyone in their neighborhood admired. They were born on the same day and were always together, at school, at family gatherings, and on weekends. It was a bond that no one dared to question, not even when the two became more aware of the world outside their shared bubble. As they entered middle school, their friendship grew into something more complicated. Joon-ho, always the more charismatic of the two, started to notice how much Minji had grown, how her laugh had become infectious, and how her eyes shone with determination in everything she did. He couldn't help but feel something stir in his chest, but, as always, he kept his emotions hidden. To Joon-ho, their bond was sacred, and he feared that acknowledging anything deeper would ruin everything they had built together. Minji, for her part, had always admired Joon-ho. He was the kind of person who made others feel at ease, a natural leader with a kind heart. She never once questioned their closeness, thinking it was just a natural part of their friendship. She never imagined that one day she might feel something different for him, something more than just friendship. When they were in their second year of middle school, a new girl named Yuna transferred into their class. She was elegant, with a quiet yet commanding presence that immediately drew everyone's attention. Her hair framed her delicate face, and her eyes seemed to hide secrets, adding to her allure. It didn't take long for Joon-ho to be drawn to her. He found himself watching her more often than he cared to admit, his thoughts lingering on her. Minji, ever perceptive, noticed the way Joon-ho's eyes lingered on Yuna, how she seemed to make him smile in a way that was different from how he smiled at her. It was the first time Minji felt a strange, aching sensation in her chest, something she had never felt before. She didn't understand it at first, but the feeling gnawed at her every time Joon-ho and Yuna spoke. Rumors about Joon-ho and Yuna began to spread. Some said they were already dating. Others whispered that Yuna had confessed to Joon-ho after school. The whispers grew louder, and Minji could no longer ignore the unease in her heart. One afternoon, while walking home from school, she saw Joon-ho and Yuna talking behind the school building. They were laughing quietly, their voices soft, and for a brief moment, Minji felt like an outsider. She quickly turned around and walked away, not wanting them to see her, her heart heavy with confusion and jealousy. Later that evening, as Minji tried to push away the troubling thoughts, she received a message from Yuna. It was an invitation to meet her at the rooftop after school the next day. Minji hesitated. She didn't know what Yuna wanted, but something told her she couldn't ignore it. The next afternoon, Minji made her way to the rooftop, her heart pounding in her chest. She arrived to find Yuna standing alone, looking serene yet cold, her expression unreadable. As Minji approached, Yuna's eyes flicked to her with a piercing look that made Minji's stomach twist. "I know you like Joon-ho," Yuna said, her voice steady and unapologetic. "But he's with me now. Don't get in the way." Minji's world seemed to tilt on its axis. She stared at Yuna in disbelief, unable to comprehend the words she was hearing. For a moment, everything went silent. The rooftop seemed to blur, and Minji felt as though she were trapped in a nightmare. Her throat tightened, and she could barely muster the strength to speak. With a sharp intake of breath, Minji nodded weakly, turning to leave. Her heart ached, each beat heavier than the last. That evening, she ignored Joon-ho's calls and texts, desperately trying to push him out of her heart. But it wasn't that simple. The pain of their growing distance was unbearable. Joon-ho, on the other hand, was confused. He noticed Minji's sudden coldness, her reluctance to speak to him. He had no idea what had happened, but the situation felt off. When he finally confronted her the next day, Minji's response was nothing like the warm, familiar tone she had always used. She shrugged, walking away without looking back. Joon-ho watched her go, feeling like something precious was slipping through his fingers. He didn't understand why Minji was suddenly so distant, but he couldn't shake the feeling that it had something to do with Yuna. The misunderstanding stretched into years. High school came and went, and while Minji and Joon-ho still spoke occasionally, a quiet wall had risen between them. Yuna moved away after her brief stint in their lives, and Joon-ho had never been in a relationship with her. But the damage had been done, and Minji never fully understood what had happened. She buried her feelings and tried to move on, but something always seemed missing. Years later, during their second year of university, Minji and Joon-ho unexpectedly ran into each other at a cafe. The cafe was quiet, the gentle clink of coffee cups and the low hum of conversation in the background, offering a strange contrast to the weight of the words about to be spoken. Minji sat across from Joon-ho, her heart racing as she tried to process everything that had happened between them. The silence stretched on, both of them waiting for the other to speak. Finally, Joon-ho took a deep breath, his eyes meeting Minji's with a quiet intensity. He had carried this truth for far too long, and now there was no other choice but to share it. Minji, he began, his voice low but steady. I never dated Yuna. She lied about us being together. She made up that whole story because she wanted to make me suffer. Minji's brows furrowed in confusion. Suffer? What do you mean? Joon-ho looked away, his fingers gripping the edge of his coffee cup tightly. Yuna never cared about us being close. She didn't want me to realize my feelings for you. She just hated seeing me have everything. She hated seeing me have the life I had, the family I had, and you. He paused, his voice thick with emotion. She hated that I had something she couldn't. And when she found out about how close we were, how much I cared about you, she wanted to destroy that. She wanted to make me lose something precious, just like she felt she lost everything when my father left her mother. Minji's heart twisted at his words, a cold realization settling in her chest. She wanted to hurt you? She whispered, barely able to believe it. Joon-ho nodded, his gaze heavy with regret. Yuna's mother was my father's ex-girlfriend. They were in love, but when my father found out she was pregnant with Yuna, he wasn't ready for that kind of responsibility. He left her, and eventually, he married my mom. Yuna grew up resenting both of them. She hated my father for abandoning her mother, and she hated that I had the family she never had. She wanted to make me suffer, make me lose the one thing I cared about, just like she felt abandoned. Minji's chest tightened as she took in this new information. All the years of confusion, the pain, the jealousy, it suddenly made sense. She had been trying to tear them apart, driven by a deep-seated resentment and bitterness over her own father's abandonment. Joon-ho's voice was quieter now, tinged with sadness. I never wanted you to be caught up in this, Minji. But Yuna used your feelings for me to get what she wanted. She thought if she could make you think I was with her, she could destroy what we had. Tears welled up in Minji's eyes, a flood of emotions washing over her as she finally understood the depth of what had happened. I can't believe. I thought it was me. That maybe you. She stopped herself, her voice trembling. I thought maybe you didn't want me, that I wasn't good enough for you. Joon-ho reached across the table, his hand gently holding hers. No, Minji. I've always wanted you. I've always loved you. It was never about Yuna. It was about me being afraid of ruining what we had. But I never stopped loving you. Minji's heart ached, and for a moment, she couldn't speak. The weight of all those years, of uncertainty, of pain, was too much. But as she looked into Joon-ho's eyes, she saw only truth and sincerity. Everything had been a lie, a terrible misunderstanding, and it had cost them so much time. I thought I was too late, Minji whispered, her voice barely audible. I thought you had moved on, that I was too late. You were never too late, Joon-ho said softly. You've always been the one. It's always been you, Minji. Minji closed her eyes, a tear slipping down her cheek. The ache in her heart, the confusion, it all faded away as she realized that everything she had wanted was right in front of her. All these years, all the pain, it was finally over. The months that followed Joon-ho's confession were filled with healing, patience, and rebuilding. They spent time together, slowly mending the trust that had been broken and rediscovering the love that had always been there, just waiting to be acknowledged. They knew they had a long road ahead, but for the first time in years, there was no more uncertainty. There was only the certainty of their feelings for each other. Joon-ho and Minji found their rhythm again. They laughed like they used to, shared secrets as if no time had passed, and the hesitation that had once lingered between them vanished. They spent hours talking about their past, their hopes for the future, and most importantly, their love for each other. Years later, as they stood together, exchanging vows in front of their friends and family, their mothers watched proudly, their eyes glistening with tears. Joon-ho and Minji had weathered the storm of misunderstandings, heartbreak, and family secrets, and now they were stronger than ever. The end.